Chapter 30. In Chicago, Freddie Lowndes' funeral was underway. The National Tatler paid for the elaborate service, rushing the arrangements so that it could be held on Thursday, the day after his death. Then the pictures would be available for the Tatler edition published Thursday night. The funeral was long in the chapel, and it was long at the gravesite. A radio evangelist went on in fulsome eulogy. Graham rode the greasy swells of his hangover and tried to study the crowd. The hired choir at gravesite gave full measure for the money, while the Tatler photographs, motor-driven cameras, zipped. 2 TV crews were present with fixed cameras and creepy peepees. Police photographers with press credentials photographed the crowd. Graham recognized several plainclothes officers from Chicago homicide. Theirs were the only faces that meant anything to him. And there was Wendy of Windy City, Lowndes' girlfriend. She was seated beneath the canopy, nearest the coffin. Graham hardly recognized her. Her blonde wig was drawn back in a bun, and she wore a black tailored suit. During the last time, she rose, went forward unsteadily, knelt, and laid her head on the casket, her arms outstretched in the pall of 𝘋𝘳𝘠𝘕𝘠 as the strobe lights flashed. The crowd made little noise moving over the spongy grass to the cemetery gates. Graham walked beside Wendy. A crowd of uninvited stared at them through the bars of the high iron fence. "Are you all right?" Graham asked. They stopped among the tombstones. Her eyes were dry, her gaze level. "Better than you," she said. "Got drunk, didn't you?" "Yep. Is somebody keeping an eye on you?" "The precinct sent some people over. They've got plain clothes in the club. A lot of business now. More weirdos than usual." "I'm sorry you had this. You did. I thought you were fine at the hospital. I admired that." She nodded. Freddie was a sport. He shouldn't have to go out that hard. "Thanks for getting me in the room." She looked into the distance, blinking, thinking, eyes shadow like snow dust on her lids. She faced Graham. "Look, the Tatler's giving me some money. You figured that, right? For an interview and the dive at the gravesite. I don't think Freddie would mind." "He'd have been mad if you passed up on it." "That's what I thought. They're jerks, but they pay. What it is, they tried to get me to say that I think you deliberately turned this freak onto Freddie, chumming with him in that picture. I didn't say it. If they print that, I didn't say it." "Well, that's just bullshit." Graham said nothing as she scanned his face. "You didn't like him, maybe. It doesn't matter. But if you thought this could happen, you wouldn't have missed the shot at the ferry, right?" "Yeah, Wendy. I'd have staked him out." "Do you have anything at all?" I hear noise from these people, and that's about it. We don't have much. A few things from the lab we're following up. It was a clean job, and he's lucky. Are you? What? Lucky. Off and on. Freddie was never lucky. He told me he'd clean up on this. Big deals everywhere. He probably would have too. Well, look, Graham, if you ever, feel like a drink, I've got one. Thanks. But stay sober on the street. Oh, yes. 2 policemen cleared a path for Wendy through the crowd of curiosity seekers outside the gate. One of the gawkers, who wore a printed t-shirt reading, "The Tooth Fairy is a one-night stand." He whistled at Wendy. The woman beside him slapped his face. A big policeman squeezed into the 280ZX beside Wendy, and she pulled into the traffic. A second policeman followed in an unmarked car. Chicago smelled like a spent skyrocket in the hot afternoon. Graham was lonely, and he knew why. Funerals often make us want sex. It's one in the eye for death. The wind rattled the dry stalks of a funeral arrangement near his feet. For a hard second, he remembered palm fronds rustling in the sea wind. He wanted very much to go home, knowing that he would not, could not, until the dragon was dead.